Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Nedarim Nundal. We begin a brand new Perek Shvi. Hanoider min hayorok. A fellow says, Neder on yorok. I will not partake in vegetables. Typically, yorok is something which is eaten raw, as opposed to something which needs to be cooked, which is more pri-hadam rather than yorok. So he makes a neder against eating yorok. That includes all your typical vegetables, except for things that are in the gourd family, which are eaten cooked. Mutar b'diluin. That is the Tanakama. Rabbi Kiva Oyser. Rabbi Kiva disagrees. Even diluin, such as pumpkins, are included in the term yerek. Why? Amr loy, Rabbi Akiva. They asked him, we're going to disprove your contention. Typically, a fellow sends his messenger, sends his butler out to the market. Kachli yerek. Please obtain for me some yerek. He comes back and he says, well, they're out of vegetables, but I did locate some pumpkins. And what does he say? Look, no vegetables, only diluin, only pumpkins. What does that show? What does that indicate? Apparently, diluin are not included, are not classified as yark. Otherwise, why would he report back in this way? Come back to consult with his sender, with his mishaleach. I didn't find yark, only diluin. Apparently, yark is one thing, and diluin are not included, are not under the banner of yark. And that proves our point. A neder from yark does not include diluin. Amar Lahem Rabbi Kiva responds exactly as such. Your proof is actually going to support my position. Exactly as you said. The fact that he comes back and he says, I didn't really find conventional, ordinary vegetables, only some, off-brand vegetable, a pumpkin. That indicates that pumpkins, can potentially be included under the vegetable banner. Look, would he come back and say, I couldn't find vegetables, but I found beans, I found bread? No connection there, right? The fact that he comes and he says, but I did find gourds, apparently. That's because pumpkins are sort of on the border and can be classified as vegetables as well. That's exactly my point, says Rabbi Kiva. Who? Would he then come back and say, well, I couldn't find vegetables, only beans? Of course he doesn't say that. Why? Ella, that proves my point. Because technically, pumpkins can be classified as vegetables, exactly as I maintain, says Rabbi Kiva. Vikitnis, as opposed to beans, which are sort of a grain, they're piled up as a grain, they're not included in the vegetable banner. And therefore, I maintain, a neder from yarok includes diluin. So, it would seem that all agree that diluin is something that the shliach wouldn't just buy on his own. He would come back and consult with the homeowner. Would you like me to buy diluin instead of vegetables? Now, what does that prove? According to the Chachamim, it proves that diluin are not typically considered vegetables. According to Rabbi Kiva, well, actually it proves that diluin are included, under the vegetable banner. The fact is, he only asks about diluin, which can potentially be classified as vegetables. He doesn't ask about bread or grain. Continues the Mishnah. A fellow who made a neder on yarok, what more does that include? V'asr b'pula mitzri lach. Pula mitzri is this type of bean plant. While it's still young and fresh, it is eaten as a vegetable together with its leaves, etc. That is included in yarok. Umutar b'yavish, but once it hardens and dries, it is considered a grain and not included in yarok. Asks the Gemara, Nedarim in yarok, how could Rabbi Kiva include diluin? V'amin yarok nadar. He made a neder on yarok, on vegetables which are eaten raw, as opposed to pumpkins which need to be cooked. They're not included. Amar Ula Ba'imar, we're speaking that he added to his expression. Yarke kedera alai. He did not simply say yarok. Yarke kedera. That has a different connotation. Even something which is sometimes cooked, including pumpkins. Perhaps yarke kedera once again describes a specific class of sort of vegetables like onions, garlic, which is used to enhance the flavor of a kedera, of a cooked dish, as opposed to gourds, melons, zucchini, squash, and pumpkins, which don't serve that purpose. How do you know to include those? Answer is, he says, I'm keeping away from yarok hamiz bashal b'kedera, even something which can only be eaten by way of proper cooking, such as a pumpkin. Okay, back to the Mishnah. Well, we have a machlekes. What's the point of the machlekes between Rabbanan who don't include Diluin and Rabbi Akiva who does? Rabbanan Safri, the Rabbanan who did not include the Diluin, hold like this: Kol milsa de tzarach shalicha lamluchi Allah, any item for which a shaliach has to come back and consult and double check with his boss, lav mina you. That's an indication that it's not part of the same class. It's not the same type. Otherwise, why would you just not buy it? Why do you have to come back and consult? Diluin is something that you consult with your boss about, which indicates that it's not considered your standard vegetable and not included in the neder from Yorok. Rabbi Akiva Savar, he holds just the opposite. Kol milsa de mimluch shlichei Allah, any item on which a shlich comes to double check with his boss, mina you, that is an indication that it is somewhat related to that type, and therefore included when it comes to Nedarim. Amar Abaye, although Rabbi Akiva includes it, but not with certainty, not 100%, with definitiveness. Moide Rabbi Akiva would agree, linear malchus, sheinei loike, although typically, when one transgresses his vow, he gets malchus, but not in this case. He was noida from Yerek and ate Diluin. We're not really 100% sure whether this svara, the fact that the shliach comes back to consult, really makes it a part of the actual Yerek family, and therefore it's asur, as any suffix deraisa is asur, but we cannot give him malchus. It's an anhasam of a Mishnah Me'ilah. We know that typically, ein shliach ledvar avera. So Reuben sends Shimon to do an avera on his behalf. Who's responsible? Shimon. You should have listened to Hashem rather than Reuven who sent you. There are several exceptions, one of which is Me'ilah. Reuven happened to have some meat belonging to a korban in his house, and he sent his shliach to serve the meat, which is an act of Me'ilah, misusing, hegdish property. Who's responsible? Who's accountable? Well, it depends. If shliach followed instructions exactly as instructed, then mishaleach, the boss, is responsible. We learn this from Agzera Shava, chet from Truma, just as over there we have shlichus, over here as well. Shlichus can apply the chiyuv to the boss, the mishaleach. But if the shliach deviated, he went off and just did his own thing, adata de nafshei, then Mr. Mishaleach is no longer responsible, only the shliach. Says the Mishnah, shaliach she'asa shlichusa, an emissary who carried out his task exactly as instructed. Balabai is small, the boss commits milah. Lo yasa shlichusa, shliach deviated, he did his own thing. Shliach mal, the shliach is responsible. And the Mishnah continues on with examples of one and the other. Man Tana, who's the author of the next part of the Mishnah? Amar Rav Chizda, Mas Nissen, the like Rabbi Akiva. It cannot be consistent with Rabbi Akiva in our Mishnah, who tells us that even when a shliach commits a slight deviation from his instructions, it can still be incorporated it can still be considered part of his instruct, if indeed it is something close enough to the original task, something for which he would come back and consult and double check. It's included in the original instructions. This Mishnah, coming up soon, indicates otherwise. Even a slight deviation is no longer considered a fulfillment of the original instructions. This non-ketzad. Can we have some examples of this halacha? Conforming or not conforming to the Mishaleach's instructions? Amar lo yitain basar la'orchem. Mr. Mishaleach asks his waiter, please serve the meat, which turns out to be carbon meat, hegdish meat. Serve that to my guests. The shliach did his own thing, or slightly his own thing. But naslhem kaved, to offer them liver. It turns out the liver was kachim. Perhaps the basar was not this time, but the liver was, and he served them liver, the wrong thing. Or teinlehem kaved, please serve them liver. V'naslhem bas, and he offered them the actual meat, which was carbon. In both cases, since there was a deviation, it was not a kiyum of the shlichus. Hashliach mo, the shliach is responsible. That's the Mishnah. This cannot be with Rabbi Akiva's way of thinking. Rabbi Akiva. If this would be Rabbi Akiva, it wouldn't work. Because when I ask you to serve meat, it means, regular meat. But liver is also considered part of the meat family. It's something that a shliach would come back and double check about. He would be mimlach shliach. He would confront his balabais. He would consult with him. It's close enough that allows for consultation. Rabbi Akiva, and according to Rabbi Akiva, ha'amar Rabbi Akiva, kol milsa de mimlach ala shliach. Anything that a shliach would come and consult about, minayu is considered part of the same type. Meat and liver is close enough, and carries that characteristic. Limal balabais, v'lo limal shliach. In this case, when he deviated just slightly, he went from meat to liver, or from liver to meat. It's close enough. It is considered a fulfillment of my request. The balabais should be responsible, not the shliach. Is that so? That is inconsistent with Rabbi Akiva? Amar Rabbi, no. It can work even according to Rabbi Akiva. Afilu tein Rabbi Akiva. But here it's so different than Neder. You should have consulted with me. You should have come back and double checked. Sure, it's close enough to allow for mimlach, to allow for consultation. But come back and consult. I didn't expect you to take initiative and offer them the liver instead of the meat. Come back and ask me. Even Rabbi Akiva, wouldn't he agree to tzarachem luchi? That when it comes to Me'ilah, the shliach was expected to come back and ask. Ask the Balabai. Just ask him, is it okay if I serve them the liver instead of the meat? And if he didn't do that, that means he did his own thing. The Balabais had no inkling that he would serve them liver without double checking. So the Balabais is not responsible. But when it comes to Nedarim, when I say, I'm making a neder on meat, does that include liver? Sure does. Because if liver and meat are so close, to the extent that a shliach would think of coming back to consult with me, that, he's not doing the meat, he's doing the liver today. That indicates that they're connected. They're related. From the same family. So when I say a neder on basar, I'm not waiting for somebody to consult with me. There is nobody there to consult. What does that lashon mean? It means anything that can potentially be included in this family. And likewise by Yorok, it includes diluin, which is sort of straddling the border between vegetable and non-vegetable. It's something that a shliach would come back to ask about, which indicates that it is related to the vegetable family and is included in his neder expression. So that was Abaye's pshat to reconcile this Mishnah by Me'ilah with Rabbi Akiva as well. Itmar Shmaita. So this explanation was presented Kamei de Rava, in the name of Abaye, and he was impressed. Amar Lohini tells them Shaper Amar Nachmeni. Nachmeni was a reference to Abaye. He was called Nachmeni for several possible reasons. The Ran over here says, because he was an orphan raised by Rabba, the son of Nachmani, who gave his adopted son a name after his own father, Rabba bar Nachmani. Another pshat says that Abaye's own father had passed away before Abaye was actually born, and the Shar Gulgulim says a profound thing when a fellow passes away. Lo Yaleinu, and there is a son, his own son, born after his passing, and the deceased was meant to be in this Galgal, come back in Gilgal. Then we see that newborn, and that newborn has a neshama of the departed father, and that's why they gave the baby here a name Abaye after his father, Lashon Av, father. Others learn that his name was really Nachmani, and they nicknamed him Abaye as a Rosh Tevos, Aleph Beis Yud Yud, Asher B'cha Yerucham Yasain, to arouse compassion for him as an orphan. In any case, Rava praised Abaye's pshat right on. It fits even with Rabbi Akiva. The Baal Bayis is not responsible for what the Shliach did. You should have come back and checked with me. So bottom line is, we have a general machlekes, something that a Shliach would come back to check, to confirm with his Baal Bayis. Is that considered part of the original type or not? Rabbanan say no. Rabbi Akiva says that's the biggest raya. That's part of the same family. Dilun are part of the Yarok family. Kavod is part of the Basar family. Mantana the Palagalei Rabbi Akiva. Who's the Shita, the opinion, who disagrees with Rabbi Akiva? Who holds that Dilun are not included in Yarok, Kavod not included in Basar. Who's that Manda Amar? Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. It's him, as we find in the following brisa. Rabban Shimon Gamliel is the one who holds that even something which is closely related to the original min is not included when it comes to Nedarim. The Sanya Nedarim Nabasar. He makes a neder on meat. Asr b'chol minei basar. He cannot have any type of meat, whether from a behema, from a chaya. What else is included? V'asr baroish. Even the secondary, low quality cuts of meat, and the head, raglayim, the feet, ubekana, the windpipe area, bukavit, his liver. That's something which we spoke about before. All these are included. This is Rabbi Akiva speaking, by the way. This is something which a shliach would come back to consult with his Baal Bayis if he doesn't find an ordinary cut of meat. So these are all included. Ubelev, the heart of the animal, ba'ifais, bird meat, chicken meat. So all these are considered basar for that reason. But even Rabbi Akiva would agree that some things are not included. Umutar basar dagim, fish is okay. That's not called basar. V'chagavim, grasshoppers. Again, this is Tanakama. This is Reb Shimon himself. That kol mili demimlech al shliach. You send a shliach to buy something, and he doesn't find the actual item you asked for, but comes back to consult further. Oh, I found something quite similar. When it comes to Nedarim, that is included as well. But Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer, he disagrees, and that's the shita of our Tanakama and our Mishnah, who disagrees with Rabbi Akiva. If it's a bit different, even if it's similar enough to allow a shliach to come back and consult, it's not included unless specified. Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer, Hanoidim and Abasar, makes a neder on basar. Oh, so b'chol minei basar, sure. Ordinary cuts of meat are asr, whether it's an animal, a behema, a chaya, a sheep, a goat, a cow. Those are standard basars. But the other varieties are mutter. Umutter baroish, uberaglayim, ubekana, ubekavid, ubelev, ubeifes, ve'entzor achlema. And it goes without saying that he's mutter and basar dagim v'chagav. So this is the shita, which disagrees with Rabbi Akiva. If it's dissimilar, it's not included. Likewise, he used to say, kravayim, the innards, the intestines of an animal, la basar, don't treat it as meat. In terms of nedarim, and anybody that attempts to eat this item, la barinish, he is not an ordinary person. Asks the Gemara, what do you mean he's not a mensch? What does that mean? The answer is, if he pays, regular rates, regular meat rate for this inner, he's not an educated consumer. If when it comes to zvina, to purchasing, he eats it, he treats it as basar, he pays a high price, la bar inish, then he's just an hedyot, he's not a smart shopper. So don't allow yourself to be shortchanged. You should know kravayim, that's not an elegant food, that's not too nutritious. In fact, you should know the halacha in Yeridea when it speaks about davar haroy l'schabed. When it comes to halacha as a bittul, something which has prominence is not batel, the Beis Yosef brings this example. Kravayim is not something which is chatich haroy l'schabed. It's not something that used to serve a guest. It's not something of elegance. It's not an elegant food, and therefore does not have that halacha. And the Hagois Hagra brings none other than our Gemara as a proof to this halacha. It's not something which is eaten by ordinary people. Certainly not people of elegance. Okay, so we have the machlekes clearly, presented here. We have two schools of thought, right? You have something which deviates somewhat, something which is slightly dissimilar. But a shliach would come to consult about that, which indicates that it has some relevance. Tanakama says doesn't matter. It's not included when it comes to Nedarim. Rabbi Kiva uses that argument to prove that it is included in the original parent category. Now, the Tanakama in the most recent brisa, which is Shitas Rabbi Kiva, tells us that everything is included in basar. It's something that a shliach would come consult about. But we have some exceptions. Basar oif is included, but not basar dagim l'chagavim. The question is why? The Gemara understood at this point. A shliach would come to consult regarding basar oif as well as basar dagim. So why not include them both? Ma'ishna basar oif l'tanakama de asr. Why is it that Tanakama, which is Rabbi Kiva's opinion, will include chicken? The Aved Shlichadim Mechale, it's something that a shliach would come ask about, which indicates relativity. Basar Dagim Nami Aved Shlicha. When it comes to fish as well, a responsible shliach would also come to ask. If he can't find real meat, Mim Lechale, he would come consult. The Amar, he would say, look, I didn't find basar. I see Dagim. Should I bring you fish? And if so, it's included. Let it be included in the Asr in the Neder against basar. Amar Abaye, you're right. Typically, it is. We're speaking Kigan Shehekes Dam. The Brisa here is speaking about a very specific, particular circumstance. A fellow underwent a bloodletting ceremony. He was Mekes Dam, in which case he has to be careful about his food intake immediately following the Akazas Dam procedure. To le'achal dagim, you keep away from fish at that point. So it's something he wouldn't partake in regardless. He keeps far, far away from fish. Why would he have to make a neder against fish? So apparently that wasn't included in the neder. And actually he's mutter in fish because he didn't make a neder on it. Yach, if that's the case, afilu oifas nami lo yachal. He's not having oifas either, which are detrimental to his health. Immediately following Hakazas Hadam, Damar Shmuel told us, Shmuel was a medical expert amongst other things. The Mesucher, a person who went through Hakazas Hadam, by the way, this is only pertaining, to the old-fashioned yesteryear Hakazas Hadam. The Taz points this out because it was a real intense experience where they would really drain you of, big portion of your blood. So there was a whole procedure I had to recover. Today, just a little blood test or blood donation doesn't really conform. In any case, a fellow who underwent Hakazas Hadam, V'achal Bisra, did Safra, and then went ahead and had a meal of bird's meat. It's not too good for him. Parach libek et Safra, his heart would fly away like a bird, meaning it weakens him. And likewise, we have a brisa which supports the keeping away from bird meat policy. V'tanya en makizin. After the Hakazah, you shouldn't sit down to a meal of le'al dagim, fish, le'al oifais, bird's meat, le'al basar maliach, salted meat. V'tanya, we have another brisa, hikas dam le'yachaloi chalav. After Hakazah's dam, don't drink milk, le'gvina, cheese, le'beitzim, eglash, achlaim, cress, le'oifais, nor bird's meat, le'basar maliach, salted meat. So if the fellow in this brisa that made the neder, he was after Hakazah's Adam, just as he's not eating fish, and therefore he has no kavanah to include fish in his neder, he's anyways not eating fish. You should apply the same thing to bird's meat. So why is bird's meat included in the neder? Shani oifis, birds are different. De'efshai de shlika. If you really cook it well, it makes it suitable for even a fellow in this condition. So there is a way to have oifis, and since there is a way for him to consume oifis, when he makes a neder on basar, he includes the oifis as well. Another example of a fellow who, regardless of his neder, will keep away from fish. A fellow has some sort of eye ailment. The dogim kashin le'nayim, because fish consumption in that state is difficult, is detrimental. So again, he's far, far away from fish regardless. Making a neder on fish is superfluous, so it's not included in the neder. Yachi. Achel dogim. What do you mean? If he has an eye pain, he should be eating fish, which are beneficial for one's eye. Damar Shmuel. Shmuel again tells us he had a simon based on the order of the aleph base. It goes nun and then samach and then ayin, right? So he had a remez. Nun samach ayin is nuna. Nuna is fish in Aramaic. Sama provides a remedy, leinaim, for eye difficulties. So it's actually good to have fish in this state. How can you tell me otherwise? When we say fish is good, that's at the end of the condition, when he's recovering from his eye condition. But this fellow here is right in the middle of his eye situation. He wouldn't be having fish regardless, and therefore it wouldn't be included in the neder. Let's do a quick chazar on today's daf. So let's start with me'ilah. You send a shliach to do something which ends up being me'ilah. Who's responsible? If he did the shlichus properly, if he followed instructions, then the mishaleach takes the heat. Otherwise, the shliach is responsible. Now, when it comes to me'ilah, or let's come back home, when it comes to Nedarim, what is included in a given term? For instance, making a neder on Yarak, what's included? Making a neder on Basar, what's included? Obviously, the Yarak and the Basar, right? What about something which is a bit off-brand? The Luin. Not necessarily classified as Yarak, but somewhat yes. Or Kaved, when it comes to Basar. It is under the Basar banner. But it's not something which you typically refer to as Basar. You would typically specify, Kaved. So is it included or not? Machlekes. Because these things are items which theoretically a shliach sent to purchase would come back and report to you. You send him to buy yarok, he would come back and say, look, I couldn't find regular yarok, I found diluin. I couldn't find basar, I found kaved. Chachamim say, well, obviously it's not included in the parent category. It's not pure yarok. It's not pure basar. And therefore it does not get the Isser Neder. Rabbi Akiva flips it around. He says, that very argument of yours only serves to prove my position. A shliach wouldn't come back and speak about something random that he found. The fact that he's come back to consult with you. He's not just saying, look, I couldn't find vegetables, case closed, here's your money back. I couldn't find that, but I did find diluin. I couldn't find basar, but I did find kaved. That indicates that it is potentially part of that same family. Diluin can be classified as yarak. Kaved classified as basar, and therefore is included. But, as the Gemara points out, when it comes to me'ilah, you can't hold the balabais accountable for that. Just because in theory it's included, you should have come to check with me. I'm here, I'm alive. You're doing my job or not? Come back to check with me. As Ram points out, the balabais has no inkling. He wouldn't fathom that a shliach would just do his own thing. I know it's close enough. I know it's potentially part of the same category. But come back and check with me. Otherwise, there's no reason for him to think that shliach is serving the liver instead of the basar. Now the Gemara concludes that even according to Rabbi Akiva, who by the way we paskin like, the Ran says, look, it's only a das yochid against Rabbi Akiva, right? That was the Rishim Gamliel, it's a das yochid, and we follow Rabbi Akiva when he's in disagreement with his contemporary. And also he says it's l'chumra, so we follow Rabbi Akiva's shita that all these things are included. But when it comes to meat, although we include many, many different variations of meat, but we have some exceptions, such as chagovim, grasshoppers, are never classified as meat. Very interesting. Oifais, are classified as meat in this case, and dagim really should be as well, except under certain circumstances where we have reason to believe that he didn't mean the dagim, such as a fellow who did the akal hadam, or the fellow with the eye ache, who in any case is keeping away from dagim, in which case he did not mean to incorporate it into his neder. May you have much, much hatzlacha and psuras tevis.